And this is not specific to her, but this aspect of like, I've got this different edgy thing that these doctors don't want you to know, or that's natural, or that's different, just being unique in some way, when sometimes there are reasons why a lot of people follow clinical guidelines for a specific thing. It might just be correct, not just that it's we're all together in on this conspiracy and this scam to keep you sick and stuff.
Moving to this next piece, I guess, and so we know the credentials, we know we got to keep them up. Obviously, this person was misusing them, but I guess what is the harm? Like, what is the harm to somebody, the potential person who is seeking the support, or yeah, like what could potentially be the harm?
There are a lot of potential harmful aspects. We'll speak generally and then some things more specific to this case. So, first is just chronologically, let's say someone is looking for a healthcare professional to work with and they see those letters. This person is now, under false pretenses, having more trust in this individual. And you may think, yeah, maybe the letters themselves don't matter, but if they didn't, no one would be doing this. She wouldn't be faking credentials if they didn't matter, and she didn't recognize that they do matter to people, knowing that there is some level or some standard of care or knowledge that that person's going to have. But beyond that, once we actually begin, let's say, with a you're working with a patient or a client, if you didn't actually demonstrate those skills, more so in the like internship part that Laura was talking about. So there is that theoretical education that's more like in the classroom. There's the skill-based competency that's done in the placements, and then there's applying that on those registration exams as well. If you didn't demonstrate any of that, then we don't actually have any idea what a person's level of knowledge or skill is in their field of work that they're claiming to be in. So this person could be practicing without a minimum standard of competence, which needs to be demonstrated, without a minimum level of knowledge, which needs to be demonstrated, and can be doing things that then do not match what is appropriate for different medical conditions. So they're providing medical nutritional therapy. They are treating medical problems with knowledge that they don't have, skills that they don't have, potentially just like guessing things, searching things, applying information potentially inappropriately. And this can have dangerous consequences. Some of it can maybe be more minor, some of it may be more major, depending on what this person is treating without their training. And if we go into some of the examples of areas that Trina is claiming to be an expert in, then we can talk about specific ways that unlicensed practice in these areas specifically can be harmful. So, looking at her social media information, we did discuss the CDE aspect. So, in the US, this is actually CDCES. So, she's faking the wrong credential for the United States, which is interesting. But for diabetes educators, like we said, there's that additional standard that we are expecting in their knowledge and skills when it comes to diabetes management. And based on some of her social media content, it seems that she's actually veering into this in a way that is very inappropriate. We'll link to this or show an image. But we did find some of her services relate to things like titrating diabetes medications, which is wild. You're not a registered healthcare professional at all, let alone a diabetes educator, and you're trying to provide people guidance on medications. Myself and Laura, like as registered dietitians, but not diabetes educators, would not do that. Even though we do have some level of education and knowledge in treating and managing diabetes, more so through diet, that's still a crazy thing to do and extremely inappropriate. And doing so without even that level of education is potentially dangerous, is inappropriate. You are, yeah, you're messing with people's medications without the knowledge to do so. She has other posts that are also talking about like why people shouldn't take certain medications. Again, very inappropriate, and again potentially harmful there. So there's that aspect of you're providing care that does not have the proper um, yeah, improperly in that, which can be very dangerous. Other harms that can come with this. So, like I said, there's the trust in initially seeing someone with that. There's potentially receiving incorrect guidance or information. There are the financial losses. If you are paying money for medical services that are not appropriate or not by a licensed person, then or not proper, then that can be a waste of your money. You may have insurance reimbursement issues if this person is not in proper licensing, and then you can't actually be reimbursed for the services you received. So there's the financial aspect there. There's also, if we look at some of her other areas of treatment here, some of it is different to women's health issues, some of it is reproductive care, which again, if we're doing that improperly, with some of the services she's providing, can result in like unplanned pregnancies, which also can have a lot of unintended outcomes there. She's offering a lot of lab testing as well. In the area of lab testing, this can lead to, in instances, like a false sense of not just security, but a false sense of finding answers for things that may or may not actually be there, when she's ordering things and then potentially interpreting them also without education. That's another aspect of potential harm specific to this. Working with athletes, one here is another aspect here where someone may be looking for more optimal performance with suggestions, but if they're again not coming from a place that is well informed or educated, can lead in not the outcomes that are desired there. She appears to have been treating a lot of gastrointestinal health issues, which again, mistakes there can lead to worsening of symptoms or um, a lot of discomfort, or essentially the opposite outcome of what we're looking for, and can also lead us into a direction that is counterproductive to what our goals are, which is, again, the opposite outcome that people are looking for. They're investing their time into it, they're investing money into it. Some people, like I said, may incorrectly then feel that I finally found answers to maybe these long-term problems I've had. And then this is finally the answer. I found the person who's finally empathetic towards these issues, who finally understands me, who finally has these answers. And then that is another, someone who has had these repeated instances of mistrust may then have fallen down that again, in this case with someone who's not even licensed in the first place. And one more thing relating to, again, that false sense of finding that right person, she also has fake testimonials on her website that we'll potentially go over in a little bit, using just images of like stock image models and just like a random woman up from Depop that we'll potentially go over. Long way to say that there are many, many different harms that can come from this, including financial losses, worsening health or worsening treatment of the conditions we're trying to treat, inappropriate medication titrations that she's not qualified to do, and many other things.
That's a lot of harm. That's a huge list, Matthew, that you just put out for harm. And I was trying to think, like, is there anything that you didn't cover? And the other one that makes me cringe a little bit of harm of, part of being part of a regulatory body also means that we know how to we know how to use information and data and store it properly, hang on to it properly, how to use it, when to report, when to not. And with that trust that you were talking about also means that those people would haven't had to have given some form of medical information, some form of medical number to be able to order lab tests. Where was that person holding it? So I think about from the data confidentiality piece too of potential harm. Like we look at scammers, with credit cards and things like that. Like data information, your health, personal information is like one of our top things that we're always trying to protect. So an unregulated person, that makes me very nervous. So that was another thing. I'm like, oh, there's got to be a little bit more harm. Laura, any other ones that we missed?
So many. I mean, well, it's not that we miss. There's just so many in general. But I'm also just thinking, like, if you are able to claim this through benefits or insurance, there's insurance fraud going on there. So that's a whole other harm that can impact so many people, that you probably don't want to get mixed up in. I don't imagine anybody would. And then, yeah, just kind of expanding that onto the fact that even giving them major benefit of the doubt if they have any knowledge in health, nutrition, certain conditions. Have they gained that knowledge or that practice in being able to keep up with the evidence? Like maybe they're right 20 years ago on some recommendations, but there's nothing regulating them to say that they are keeping up with things that change. And in the areas that they are practicing in, like PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, gut health issues, irritable bowel syndrome, all of this good stuff. It's very early in the research, and there's lots of development, even just like month by month, as to what the best practice guidelines are for these conditions. So, yeah, I don't have faith that they would be keeping up with that. But there's nobody who can say so because they don't have any regulation.
Right. And especially in so many different like subspecialties at once, keeping up with all of that at the same time would be quite challenging, which is another piece there. And like you said, even if some of the information, or maybe a lot of it, is more, let's say, mostly correct or general enough that it's not particularly harmful, I did see some examples where there are things that specific things that could be like I mentioned, the medication changes, or this one that says PPIs and acid blockers are a scam, which is interesting because there are ways through food to manage things like acid reflux, which she refers to as acid reflex on one of her posts. But there are also people where things like that can you may need the medication to avoid things like Barrett's esophagus, which in itself is like a pre-cancerous stage that can become very, very dangerous if it proceeds to esophageal cancer, which is very deadly. So just an example like that, where um, she's giving that information specifically regarding medications, which is more of an individualized type of discussion to have with one's healthcare team, like their doctor, and seeing what benefit they are getting from other means to see if those medications are needed or depending what their risk is and things like that. There's also an aspect of like, and this is not specific to her, but this aspect of like, I've got this different edgy thing that these doctors don't want you to know, or that's natural, or that's different, just being unique in some way, when sometimes there are reasons why a lot of people follow clinical guidelines for a specific thing. It might just be correct, not just that it's we're all together in on this conspiracy and this scam to keep you sick and stuff. Sometimes clinical guidelines just make sense because that's what research is at that time, and it can evolve over time. But trying to, yeah, again, be this like anti-establishment type of figure is another piece that's has some aspects here and is a common thing in this type of stuff online.